Zach, who works in the Zach Purcell, works in the City Council.
Thanks for that talk. I just had a question about the model you're proposing, whether you think it's only suitable for societies that have plentiful access to water resources. So for places like Las Vegas or a lot of the, I guess, Australian cities who are having like the water shortages, I'm not sure if it's an issue of people putting plots in their backyard, or is that one? Are those small-scale ag producers in the New South Wales basin, are they under threat from water security problems?
Look, that is the critical issue in Australia is water shortage and how to efficiently use it. But it's not just quantity of water, and this is the issue I think for New Zealand is quality of water as well. So if you do have polluting industries and you pollute your water, but let me just take the Sydney Basin area. The government has now just established a water commission for the key river system that feeds the Sydney Basin. So it does get a lot of natural water, but it's very reliant on this river system for small-scale irrigation. And so it is the quantity and quality that we don't spoil the water through our agricultural activity as much as the quantity of water available. In terms of the backyard, as you might know, in many Australian cities you can't use a hose, you have to use buckets. So that is going to cut, people are pulling out their gardens and their edible gardens. Because I think this might be the bigger issue, that they just can't afford the water rates for the thing. But this is where I think communal, where you're working together, and in fact the City Council gives you a rebate on the water used because they see it as actually a carbon sink is taking place in that area. There can be water harvesting technologies being used. I do also, I think that the alternative employment generation possibilities from community gardening and urban agriculture, where people are having to become smarter and more sustainable, are enormous. So in devising the smart worm farm or the water harvesting equipment that could be used in a communal plot. But yes, in Australia, we might see the demise of the backyard garden and the re-emergence of the community garden.
So just from personal experience, this last year was the first time I've ever tried to garden at home, so some interesting learnings. But I also work on the kind of water supply and demand just as in a strategy level, just because Wellington is having some issues with peak time water demand this summer. And just was fascinated by how much water I was actually using to feed my little small plot, and was wondering, this is actually the right way to go to feed so much water to a few tomatoes and some lettuce when we're having such problems.
We definitely need more research. There's this technology life cycle assessment where you account for the inputs and outputs of various scale and context-specific food growing activities. So we need that research desperately. But those input-output models will account for biophysical resources, labour, so biophysical water, water, soil, labour, the seeds, the feed. They do not, and then the output is volumes produced and maybe the quality, the nutrient quality of the potato or the tomato. But they cannot account yet for the spiritual, the well-being, even the physical activity isn't yet accounted in them. So they're very crude, and they basically are economic models as they stand. And unless we make them more multifunction models, results of those studies are too narrowly conceived, and we will all be driven back into the industrial model. I'll just say one more thing though. When you think about the water used, Tony McMichael's and other people's work on producing the litre of milk or the kilo of beef compared to the water that goes into your tomato, and even if it was thousands of little tomato growers, even just doing a single function analysis based on embedded water, the small, I think, would come out on top of the big dairy meat producers. They are extraordinary guzzlers of energy and water. So,
Paul Bruce from the Regional Council.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. Just on that water issue, just briefly following the last point up, if you're actually watering your own garden, presumably you might use a watering can and just water it just exactly where you need it, or even have a drip feed system. But but looking at the sewage, how many households are going to compost toilets? I know here in New Zealand it's actually quite difficult to get the okay from the City Council, but if it's done properly, there's no real health problems. But is there a movement towards that? I mean, that's where the major amount of water goes, is down the toilets. Where
I can't answer that question, but this is an instance where if public health had its way, it probably would say no to that form of water recycling. But on public health grounds, because one of the great public health success stories was the sort of industrial sewerage system. So, but I can't answer, is there a move in Australia towards that use of toilet waste?